Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Min and I'm your host for today from NDIS Property Australia here in Brisbane, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today's topic is infinite automation, and the guest speaker here is Colin Peterson. Colin, welcome today.
Thank you, Min, and good morning to all of your listeners.
Wonderful. Mate, tell us more about who you are and what you guys do at Infinite Automation.
So we're a Melbourne-based company. We make our products here in Australia, which is unusual. So we have a couple of products. We have a number of products, but a couple that I've got here just to show you. This is our one of our main products. This will automate.
Oh, excuse me, Colin. We are doing an audio interview,
Okay.
Not a video.
All right, my apologies. All right, so for your listeners, we make a number of products. They're made here in Melbourne. So Australian-made product, which is made to Australian safety standards. And that's a protection for everybody, for all of the users. The Australian electrical standards are among the highest in the world. So we have our own proprietary app, and it drives all of the automation. There really isn't much we can't automate, particularly in the NDIS space, but even from a domestic, residential, we go into industrial and commercial as well.
Wonderful. How long have you guys been around for?
So we started the company around about 2017, and then it was an idea and it was about building it. And we had the products, we had everything ready to go. We launched just pre-COVID, and as you can imagine, COVID made it very difficult to get out and to market our products. We were still able to do it, but we had things like, a Teams meeting like this one where we had to show people, and there's a display board, which only you can see behind me, that we could show people. And what we would do is we would get them to log in, and they'd be able to turn the lights and the fans and the different items on the display board on and see them operating. And that gave somebody very quickly, it would show somebody just how easy it is to download the app. So 5 minutes after speaking to someone who we'd never spoken to before, they'd be turning lights and fans and heaters on and off in our office. Wow. So very, very simple product, very intuitive and easy to use app. We work to a mantra, Min, of simple, reliable and affordable. Simple in that anybody who can use a smartphone would find our app pretty intuitive, and just a little bit of time spent on it, you'd soon learn to operate everything. Reliable, as I mentioned, products are made here in Australia, and so they're made to very high standards, and affordable. So most of the intelligence, in fact, really all of the intelligence in our system resides in the app and in the ability for the user to program, schedule, hard time, child lock, do all of things that they want to do. So very little to no hard wiring or, having to pull apart. So it's easily retrofit. With a lot of the SDA work that we do, we wait until we have a discussion with the people that are building it. We see what it is that needs to be automated. And then we pretty much wait until they've completed the homes, and we then have the things retrofit so that we know if there needs to be some hard wiring, but generally there isn't.
What kind of clients in the NDIS space does your product suit?
Well, just about anybody, because, it could be something as simple as lights, or it can be more complex with doors and garage doors and winches or other items that somebody wants to operate. And, anything that you can imagine, we can set up the system for that to be automated.
So with the doors, are you talking a fob access or a keyless entry or a iPhone app activation to open the door?
Yeah, it can be any of those. We don't use a lot of fobs. We tend to use our phone and our app for most of it. But for instance, we can set up systems where if you're driving to your front gate, so if you're coming in, that the phone will ask you, do you want to open the garage door? And so you can say yes. We work seamlessly with Google and Alexa so that you can, if you use the Google Home, for instance, you can say, Google, good night, and everything gets turned off. But proximity sensors, the ability for it to recognise that you're in a certain proximity and ask you whether you want doors or particularly garage doors and gates open.
What have you seen in the marketplace that work and doesn't work when it comes to home automation?
Okay, well, there's a plethora of products out there, and probably the first thing I would draw people's attention to is that you really want one app. There are a whole lot of products that you can get that can be automated, but, if they're not working with Google, if they're not working and you've got to use a separate app for each one of them, that's probably the biggest issue. There's some really good products out there, but they'll only open a garage door, or they'll only turn lights on and off, or you can only buy a certain type of globe. That's not our products. Our products turn the power on and off, or send the required message or pulse to the blind, the garage door, the hatch, the roller shutter, any of those items, but all done and controlled through one app.
So your product could work with the aircon split systems there, the blinds going up and down, the lights, doors. What else?
No, thanks for the question. There's one product now that we're about to launch. We expect to have it in the last quarter of 22, and that is our IR device. So anything that operates from an infrared remote, which might be your air conditioning, but it could also be television or any number of items, you'll be able to use your Infinite Automation app to drive those items. That's pretty useful when, here in Australia we have extremes of climate. So right now in Melbourne it's really quite a cold morning. If you wanted to turn on the heater at the office, for instance, or if you're on your way home and you wanted the house to be warm, you can turn it and set the temperature. We've always been able to turn them on and off, but that adds another dimension where you can actually operate the infrared control.
This product is really good for people who are in wheelchairs, living in an accessible environment who can't really communicate to the carer or other co-tenants, and they'll be able to just live in their own little room with their temperature, their lights, volume of sound from their appliances, whatever. That's a perfect way for someone to be living in the new age, I guess, to live independently.
They can live independently, and this allows them, as I say, with one app. And that app can be used on a phone, but it can also be used from a desktop or, from a net or on the net. And one other item I might just mention while we're talking about that is that our app is designed for one to multiple users. And so where somebody has high physical support, or there's somebody else that they don't want to feel like they're intruding, but they can look to see, Min hasn't been to the bathroom this morning. So somebody else can see without it being intrusive. They can see what items are used. And, of course, while I mention that, so when you turn our app on, anything that you turn on, you'll immediately be able to see the power consumption data. And so you can see what power is being used. You can also see if you've left something on, if you've inadvertently left an item on and turn that off. But the app provides for so much background intelligence that, it's only when people start using it that they start to realise, I can do so much more than I thought with this product.
So how does a carer or a carer's business know if a participant has gone to the toilet or not for the day? Or
Well, they can see whether the light was turned on or off or when. So my wife's grandfather died in a care facility, and he was there for 3 days before anybody had come to check on him. Now, it wasn't high care, and I'm not criticising the people. They just, they're often overworked. But it was a sad end to somebody who had fought for Australia during the war, had been a prisoner of war on the Burma Railway. So it was really quite a tragic end when, for the want of somebody being able to look at an app and say, hey, Wal hasn't got anything turned on, this is not usual. And so I don't want to suggest there is more intelligence than there is, but somebody else with the ability to look at the app can see what's being used. Oh, yeah, Min's out and about, he's good. So without it being incredibly intrusive, if you've got CCTV cameras and you're allowing someone else, to me, it sort of crosses over or crosses a line into being spied upon or somebody really watching you. And that could make people uncomfortable.
How much of a need to have servicing or updates to the products for automation after installation has occurred?
Okay, this is a terrific product, and we've had some terrific question. We've had some very large apartment, people who develop and build large apartments, and their concern, rightly, is, look, what if you introduce a subscription fee? Now, I can tell you here on your program, we have looked at that. We have no intention of introducing a subscription fee. If you buy our products, you automatically receive the app, and the app updates over the air. So it's artificially intelligent enabled. Whenever we bring out a change to the app or some development, your product will automatically develop to that. So it'll have all of those new features that we might introduce. So there's no need for somebody to come out and service it. One of our biggest promoters here in Melbourne had a competitor product, and he wanted to automate his gates. He spent a lot of money. It was over $250,000, and he wanted to automate his gates and some garage doors. And we were able to do it for a fraction of the price. The call-out fee for him was substantial. There's none of that within our product because, as I say, it's retrofit and the intelligence resides in the app. And so when new features are added, it's automatically enabled over the air.
Is there a big difference between your competitors and your product? Is there? Apart from price,
price is significant because we've designed it for that retrofit. And I really hasten to say there are some fantastic products out there, and there are products that, from a complexity point of view, can do a lot more than we might suggest that somebody needs. But you pay a heavy price for that complexity. We've really kept ours simple and functional so that anything that somebody wants to do, we've looked at how can we achieve that at an affordable price. And that's what separates us. Often when we talk to architects, and we do a lot of work with architects in that design stage, and they shake their head and say, they might have asked us for a price on a particular automation, and they say, you can do it for that price. And we'll say, well, look, that's not exact, but it's within the ballpark, and it's only when people start adding things that the cost then might increase. But it's quite... if I were to say to you that we have automated homes for as little as $3,000, and, it depends what somebody wants to introduce.
Okay, then, let me ask this question. Hypothetical. So we have a 4-bedroom house, carer, office, plus 3 tenants in wheelchairs, and an investor wants to go the full extreme, from voice activation, phone app, blinds, aircon, heater, doors, everything. What would be the minimum cost to them as a budget versus what it could go up as high as?
Well, I'm assuming the blind. So let's say the minimum price, where it might be fairly basic, might be around the $4,000, but it might go as high as up to $10,000. And we do have jobs that might come in at $30,000, but they're always combined with security cameras and with things being opened and shut. Remember that you can drive our automation from anywhere in the world, and we've tested it from the US and from India, and the latency is 0.8 of a second. Now that it's almost impossible to see how quickly you can't detect any sort of latency, and so we know that we can do it at a price that others just can't get anywhere near, and it's because of this no hard wiring. Now, let me just say that sometimes, a build that we're doing at the moment, for instance, the house and other parts of the property might be a large property, and so you might get issues with the Wi-Fi, and so it's why it's good for us to be involved in the design stage, because we will predict any possible obstacles that we might overcome with Wi-Fi reception. And that's almost always an issue where you've got large properties and it's carrying over a distance. And it's an easy fix. We just simply suggest an access point or, a Wi-Fi booster at some point in between.
Yes. So 10 to 15 grand is a good price range if you're going to go the whole kit caboodle.
Yes, and the bulk of that is in the installation. And we're not an installation company. We work with your electricians. Now, for instance, in our boxes, I'll show you, but your viewers can't see, but on the inside of our box, so if we were to post these up to Queensland, for instance, and somebody in a remote area was fitting them, they can simply scan the inside of the box and it takes them straight to the website, which has got the installation guide and then the configuration guide and talks them through. And we also, we do field calls from people in the field that are, that might need some assistance. But once an electrician has fitted our product, they have no trouble a second time.
That's good. That's good. I know that in the SDA space, once the participant has been earmarked for the house, then the provider would lodge the application to the NDIA for the funding for certain modifications to the house as per the participant's disability. Do you deal with that matter on that side when funding is approved by the NDIA? Because you got to send the bill out, obviously, yourself as a company. Is that billed to the investor first to get a rebate from the government, or you bill that to the NDIA via the support coordinator or the...
We simply receive our instructions from the client. So the client tells us how that is to occur. If the NDIS are paying for instance, then we bill them for that product. So we simply get told where to send the invoice and we provide the invoice to them. If we're providing the electricians and the people doing the installation, then we'll put the whole job together and we'll send that through to the NDIS or to the client or to the developer. Sometimes it's the developer that's paying that. And
It's very important for investors who are listening on this podcast now to remember the word future-proof, because you're spending a lot of money on your property and you want to ensure that the house is up to standard for the long term. It's future-proof by way of future tenants who are coming in that see that this is a up-spec'd property. It may be home automation, it may be fire sprinklers or whatever it may be. But if you're spending this kind of money for a house, an extra 5-10 grand extra to future-proof it is a very small outlay, considering how much you're investing in this property already.
Yes, we've had this conversation before when you were in Melbourne. We were having a chat, and it's difficult to understand why somebody would scrimp and save on things that are obviously attractive to the tenant. And at some point, you might be struggling to get a tenant. That's not the point that you want to be looking at, what else can I add now? Now, I'll just quickly mention, Min, a development in Wantirna in Melbourne that we did with 59 townhouses. It was just at the point where the market was starting to slow. These were not NDIS or SDA. However, we did a price for him on the whole 59 townhouses. We provided the electricians, and it was a basic automation, all lights, garage doors, and some GPOs. And that was around $3,000 we did that deal for. And it was interesting that he's now long since sold all of those townhouses, and he tells us that the perception in the mind of the client was that they got about $20,000 worth of value. And that's really interesting that, their perception was that they were getting $20,000 of value, and he feels, and so we do all of his work now, and he feels that, it's well worth it because you get a satisfied client. The client thinks they're doing really well, and you're doing all the functions that a far more expensive system might do, but just as reliable and just as capable of doing those things.
Yeah. That's a great story, Colin. I think it's hard for people like us, normal people like us who can live our lives normally, to take for granted the ability to turn on a light switch, or the aircon, or the lights, or the blinds going down. But put yourself in their shoes or in their wheelchair. You can't communicate, you can't get out, you can't do anything. All you got is your phone app to make your life better.
I could not agree more, Min, and you really have to realise that for people who are able-bodied or non-disabled, we take things for granted. But for people that have, in some cases, quite significant disabilities, automation provides a lifestyle that they would not ordinarily be able to do. And just while we're on that, we were asked by somebody who's quite prominent in the SDA field, could we work on cues for automation that were non-verbal? And the reasoning there being that with people who are non-verbal, it's all right for those of us, Google turn the lights on, Google turn the lights off. In fact, for some people, it's a bit of a gimmick. But for people, it's very real, opening and closing doors and turning items on. Can we have cues? And so we're working on that, and we can pretty much use any interface that any disabled person, I'm aware of one, I've known this lady, she's now 28 years of age, but since she was a child, and she uses an iPad with her cheek, and she actually writes books. She's been featured on the ABC. Kim Hopton is her name if somebody wanted to Google it, but she writes romance novels with her cheek. Now, we can automate with any device that somebody wants to use. We've just got to work personally with them to be able to then deliver what they want to do. And that can add a little bit of cost, but we don't charge, phenomenal amounts. We just work with what those persons' tools are and assist them to use the Google or to, use our automation.
Yeah, that's great. You said something earlier about security cameras. I'm curious to know from your point of view, if I had a house somewhere in Australia that was my investment, and I wanted to give a bit of peace of mind to the tenants and the carers in there, that there was lights. What's the device in the back when there's movement in the backyard, the lights turn on or whatever, something like that in the backyard, in the front yard, to that a deterrent somewhat. I mean, that kind of product, is that inexpensive or is that very expensive, that product there?
Well, we don't actually do that. We work with companies that do that. And it's not that, it's relatively inexpensive to have some basic security cameras, just have that security. And a cautionary tale there is to just say that if you think that's what you want to do, because that does involve hardwiring, it's best to think about that at the design stage, because it's quite simple then to get your cabling in or get it. And, we would call out the guys that we work with. We do quite a bit of work with Bosch panels, for instance, and we've now introduced into our app the ability to arm and disarm alarms remotely. Now, anybody, and that's just about all of us, who's heard an alarm going off when you happen to be in the street and you feel powerless, it's not like you can put on your Superman cape and go and fix things. It just becomes an irritation. And so if you're living next to somebody whose alarm's going off all the time, but they don't live there, they live miles away, the ability to arm and disarm on an app is quite a great feature, at least for the person living next door. But going back to the example that you're giving, for instance, deliveries. We all now rely, we're all buying online, we're all getting deliveries, but how do you know that the person coming to deliver your package is the right person? Now, that's where a security camera, and we have a number of clients and people who promote our product who tell us how terrific it is to be sitting in Gisborne looking at their premises in a laneway in North Melbourne. A delivery man rolls up, yes, that's the right guy, push the button, up comes the roller door. They can watch him on security camera. He's delivered the product. He's now out of the premises. I push a button, it comes down, and I'm sitting, 150 kilometres away. So there's some real advantages in being able to do that, and delivery is just one of them.
Yes, gotcha. Colin, any final words of advice for people who are thinking about future-proofing their SDA property from your expert experience and what you've seen that does and doesn't work? I mean, what's your...
Okay, just one quick story there. I want you to imagine you're going to buy a car tomorrow. You've looked at this car, you've done your research, sounds terrific, really smart-looking car. You jump in the driver's seat to go for a test drive and you look down and it's got a window winder. Now you'd think, gee, really, a window winder in this day and age? Well, all that's happening there is the automation industry has got so far ahead of the housing industry, but we will be there. And if you want to keep your product, if you want to have the best product, automation is a necessity. It's not something you think, I'll put it in later. Think about it now. And that keeps your expense down. Shop around, talk to us, talk to our competitors. We're always happy to provide an obligation-free quote, and we ask for nothing more than the electrical schematics, and we'll give you a rough idea from that, and then we can have a conversation with you. So automation's coming.
Yes.
Be at the front end. Don't be a dinosaur.
Yes. Now, what's the best way for our customers to get in contact with you or your team?
So I'm happy to give out my mobile, but you can go to infiniteautomation.com.au and you can make an inquiry on the website and somebody will contact you within a day or so, or you can call me on 0428 799 558. We also have an office number, which I'm happy to give you, and if the office is unattended, then the number will be redirected. And that number is 03 906 92089.
Do you service all areas of Australia?
Yes, we do. We try and, if it gets into really remote areas, we have to find electricians or have a chat to somebody. But we're keen to make sure that we have that national presence. So just contact us. We've worked down in Tasmania, for instance, and, with a fellow that does a lot of SDA work down there, and I know that he's very happy with the product we've provided.
Oh, great. That's great. Colin Peterson, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and hopefully our listeners will take a lot out of this session today. Yeah.
Always great to talk to you, man. Have a good day.
Thank you, mate. Bye-bye. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.